Welcome students. Today we are going to discuss about the sources of business finance. Now we all know that finance is needed to establish a business. If you want to start a new business, we need funds. In order to run the day-to-day operation of the business, we need finance. To modernize the business, if you want to modernize the business in terms of technology or in terms of infrastructure, then we also need funds to do that. To expand the business, if you want to expand the business, we also need funds, or even to diversify the business. For example, currently your business is dealing with electronic products, selling electronics products, and you want to venture into clothing also. So that is known as diversification of the business. And in order to diversify the business, you also need funds. Which is why availability of finance or funds is crucial for the survival and growth of the business. So now what is business finance? We have learned what is finance. Now what is business finance? Business finance may be defined as planning for raising, managing, and controlling all the money used or capital funds of any kind used in connection with the business. Now when we talk about business finance, it does not mean only money. But what does it mean? It means planning for raising funds. You have to plan. Business finance includes planning for raising funds. How will you raise funds? From which sources will you raise funds? Whether it is by issuing of equity shares, whether you'll take loans from the banks, or whether you will do a partnership, or whether you'll ask for a loan from your friends and relatives. You have to plan. Alright, so business finance include what? First, you have to plan for raising funds. After you have raised funds, alright, you need to manage your funds. You need to manage your fund. Where will you invest your funds? How much you will invest in buying inventories, how much will you invest in infrastructure of the organization. You have to manage your funds so that none of the funds which you have raised will be wasted. And then you have to control all the money, all the funds which you got. After you have invested, how much return you're getting from one investment, how much return you're getting from another investment. You will compare, and you have to make certain arrangement or certain control measures so that you will maximize your income. That is controlling, and that is known as business finance. Business finance does not mean only money, but instead business finance, it is a process of planning on how will you raise your capital, or how will you raise funds for your business, from which sources. After you have raised funds, how will you manage your funds, how will you manage your finance, how will you manage your money, and also to take control measures of the money or of the funds which you have raised. Business finance does not mean only money, but it's a process of planning to raise money. After you have got the money, you have to manage, invest, very intelligently, and you have to take certain control measures so that you do not lose any money. You do not lose any of the funds, so that your funds will give you profit, not losses. Now, what is the nature and significance of business finance? What is the importance of business finance? Why do we need finance? So we need finance while starting a business. While starting a business, you need finance. For what purposes? In order to procure fixed assets, and also for meeting the day-to-day expenses of the organization. To meet the working capital requirements. To meet the working capital requirements of the organization. Now, what happened is, suppose you have procured funds, and you have invested your funds in goods, in buying inventories, in buying raw materials, and so on and so forth. Suppose you sold goods on credit on 1st of January 2020. Let's say you sold goods on credit on 1st of January 2020. on credit. Will you get the payment here on the same day itself? No, you will not get payment on the same day itself. Let's say you've given them a 3 months credit, so you'll get the payment in 31st of March 2020. You'll get the payment here. Yes or no? Right? Now during these 3 months, your money will be stuck. Yes or no? Right? Your money will be stuck. You will not get back your money. Yes, no. In order to finance, all right, in order to finance for this amount of time, for this 3 months, you need what? You'll need extra funds. You need extra finance. This is known as working capital requirements. Clear? All right. To finance, what else? To finance the growth and expansion projects of the company. Now you want to expand your business. If now you have only one branch, you wanted to have 2, 3 branches of your business. Yes, no. In order to that, you need money, you need finance, right? Next, the firm can meet its liabilities on time. Just like you have sold goods on credit, right? You have sold goods on credit. You will also buy goods on credit. Yes, you'll also buy goods on credit. You will also take loan. Now, in order to repay back debts, yes, no, in order to repay your debts, right? You need to have funds with you. You know, to repay your debts, you need to have funds with you, right? So, in order to repay your liabilities on time, you need to have finance. Okay, the firm can carry on the business smoothly. Now, if you want your business to grow and if you want your business to do well, okay, then you need your business to run very smoothly. There should not be any disturbances in your business activities. Yes or no, right? Now, if there's shortage of money, then your business will come to a halt. If there's shortage of funds, your business will come to a halt. Now, for example, if there is demand for your goods, but you don't have money to buy your raw materials in order to produce finished goods, but you don't have the funds, right? So that means the business will come to a halt. Yes or no? Right. So it is very crucial for you to have funds so that the business runs smoothly. The firm can adopt latest technology and new innovative methods of production. Now we all know that technology keeps improving day by day. Yes, no. If you even take a look at the mobile phones, yes, no. Every year, mobile phones keeps on improving, right? Likewise, okay, the technology in the business needs to be improved. For example, before, if you're working in any offices, they're using files, paper files. Yes, no, but now they're using computers, right? So there's a development in technology, right? So if you want your business to do well, you need to cope up with the technological advancement, and in order for you to do that, you must have what? You must have funds within your business. If you don't have funds within your business, then you will not be able to cope up with the technological advancements which is happening in the business environment. Yeah, the firm may face competition strongly. You also need funds in order to compete with your competitors, right? What's happening is small firms, okay, because they don't have enough funds, they cannot compete with larger firms. Okay, so they need to close down the business. There are so many businesses, alright, because they cannot compete with a larger organization. Okay, so they need to shut down their business because they don't have sufficient funds in order to compete with larger organizations. Okay, so in order to face competition, also you need funds. Okay, the firm may replace its assets whenever necessary. Okay, in order to be able to replace your assets of the business whenever necessary, you also need funds. Let's say, for example, right now you are using machinery A. Okay, now you're using machinery A, but in the market, machinery B has come. Okay, machinery B has come, and machinery B is more efficient than machinery A. All other businesses have bought machinery B, but since you do not have the ample amount of funds to buy machinery B, you're still using machinery A. It's mean that this would only create problem for you. Yes, and this would only create problem for you because the competition will be more for you, right? So you need to replace your assets whenever it is necessary, and that can only be done only and only when you have funds within your business. The firm can face recession and depression period of trade cycle. Now, there may come a point, all right, there may come a point of time whereby your business, okay, whereby your business might not do so well, might not earn profit as much it should earn, right? But your expenses will not go down, yes or not? So, in such situation where you are not earning enough profit, but the expenses is there, now in order to pay off your expenses, in order to pay off your liabilities, you need to have funds. Okay. Fine. So these are the nature and significance of business finance. Clear? Now let us discuss about the sources of business finance classification. Now when you talk about the sources of business finance, it means the various sources from which the organization can procure funds from. Okay, and these sources, all right, has been classified on three bases: on the basis of periods, on the basis of ownership, and on the basis of sources of generation. On the basis of period, all right, the sources of finance has been classified under long-term sources, under medium-term sources of finance, and under short-term sources of finance. On the basis of ownership, it has been classified as owners' funds and borrowed funds. And on the basis of sources of generation, it is classified as internal sources of finance and external sources of finance. Okay, so let us discuss one by one. Now, on the basis of period, like I've said earlier, on the basis of period, it has been classified into long-term sources of finance, medium-term sources of finance, and short-term sources of finance. Now, when the organization is procuring funds for a period of more than 5 years, for example, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, or more, depending on various factors, such sources of finance are known as long-term sources of finance. Clear? Now, the funds which have been procured from long-term sources of finance is mainly used for capital expenditure. Capital expenditure, which means mainly used in procuring fixed assets. Okay, the funds which the organization has procured, all right, through long-term sources of finance can be used for capital expenditure such as purchase of fixed assets, all right, like plant, machinery, land, building, etc. Okay, next, medium term sources of finance. Medium term finance means financing for a period of 3 to 5 years. If the organization is procuring funds for a period of 3 to 5 years or for a period of 2 to 5 years, it is known as medium term finance. Such sources of finance are known as medium term sources of finance. Medium term sources of finance is needed when long term loan is not available. If long term sources of finance is not available, then the organization can opt for medium term sources of finance. Or medium term sources of finance is used for expansion, modernization, and modernization purposes, and etc., or we can say diversification. Okay, so when an organization is borrowing funds, all right, for a period of 2 to 5 years or 3 to 5 years, all right, then such fund is known as medium term finance. Clear? And the medium term finance is mainly used for expansion purposes of the organization, for modernization purposes, or for diversification purposes of the organization. Next comes the short term finance. Short term financing means financing for a period of less than 1 year. If the organization is borrowing fund or is procuring funds for a period of less than 1 year, then such sources of funds are known as short term sources of finance. Alright, the need for short-term finance arises to finance the current assets of the business. If the organization wants to finance, alright, or needs funds for procuring current assets of the business, then he can get funds from short-term sources of finance. Current assets meaning stocks, okay, goods like inventory, raw materials, and finished goods. Debtors, paying to the debtors, minimum cash, and bank balances. Short-term financing is also known as working capital financing. Clear? Next. Sources of business finance classification on the basis of ownership. Now, on the basis of ownership, it has been classified as under owner's fund and borrowed funds. What is owner's funds? It refers to the fund contributed by the owners as well as the accumulated profit of the company. This funds remains within the company and it has no liability to return this fund. If the funds for the organization is procured from the owners pocket themselves, then such kind of fund is known as owner's fund. Or any funds which have been accumulated within the company itself from the profit of the company, then such kind of fund is known as owner's funds. For example, if the company is earning a profit 10 lakh and out of this 10 lakh, all right, the company keeps, let's say, 3 lakh rupees, all right, as what? As retained earnings or retained within the business, then 3 lakh, this 3 lakh rupees is known as what? Owner's fund. Clear? All right. Next, borrowed funds. It refers to the fund borrowed by the firm. It is borrowed by firms for a specified period. So any funds which does not come from the owners, any funds which does not come from the owners of the organization or from the accumulated profits of the organization, then such kind of fund is known as borrowed funds. Yeah. Now, what is the difference between owners and borrowed funds? We have points of difference and we have owners funds and we have borrowed funds. Now, the meaning. It refers to the funds contributed by the owners as well as retained earnings. Alright, like I've said earlier, any funds which have been contributed by the owners themselves or any funds which have been accumulated from the profit of the organization, the such kind of fund is known as owners funds. Now when we come to borrowed funds, it refers to the borrowings of the fund. It refers to all the funds available by way of loans or credit. If the organization is procuring funds from outside, not from the owners and not accumulated profits, but by borrowing funds from the outside parties, then such kind of fund is known as borrowed funds. Time period. Owners funds is a source of permanent capital. What does this mean is that the organization does not need to pay back because why? The organization is using its own money. Yes, no. Now, suppose if you are an entrepreneur and you invest your money into your own business, right? You don't expect your business to give back to you that one. Yes, no. You expect to get profit, but you don't expect your business to repay back to you. You're not giving a loan to your own business, isn't it? Instead, you're investing into your own business, right? You don't have to repay back to yourself. That is the meaning of permanent capital. Okay. Now, borrowed funds is for a fixed period of time. Now, when you are borrowing funds from the third party, when you are borrowing funds from outside party, then you have to repay back. Suppose if you are borrowing funds from a bank, right? You have to repay back that loan. Yes or no? Right? So, borrowed funds, all right, is for the fixed period of time. After a certain period of time, you have to repay back. Clear? Next, security. No security is required with owner's fund. Okay, now if you are investing your own money into a business, do you need any security? No, right? But in case of borrowed funds, when you are taking a loan from a bank, you have to keep something as collateral, yes or no, right? As a mortgage, right? So in case of borrowed funds, you need to give security, but in case of owner's fund, security is not needed. Control. Owner's funds contributors control the company. Yes, no. You yourself, you are investing into your own business, right? So you will get control over your business. Yes, no. You are the one who's controlling your own business. right? But in case of borrowed funds, if you are taking a loan from a bank, the bank will not come and control the business. You will run your own business. Yes or no, right? You will run your own business. The bank will not say that since I have given you a loan, right, I will come and control the business. No, you will run your own business, and after a certain period of time, you will repay back the loan which you have taken from the bank, right? So, in case of control, in case of owners fund, right, the contributors have control over the company. But in case of borrowed funds, right, the contributors does not have any control over the company. Clear? Sources. The sources of owners fund are share capital, retained earnings, GDR, ADR, and IDR. Share capital. Okay, let's say you have a company, all right, and if you are procuring funds for your company through issue of shares, equity shares, or preference shares, okay, that is known as procuring funds through what? Share capital. Another sources of owners fund is the retained earnings. You like I've said earlier, you're getting a profit of 10 lakh. Out of this 10 lakh, 3 lakh, you keep it in your business. That is known as your retained earnings. Okay. Or through GDR, Global Depository Receipts, GDR, known as Global Depository Receipts, ADR, American Depository Receipts, or IDR, International Depository Receipts. If you are procuring funds, okay, from outside the country or from foreign markets, okay, then you have to procure it through GDR, ADR, and IDR. Clear? Then borrowed funds. The sources of borrowed funds are debentures, loans, trade credit, public deposits. Okay, you can issue debentures. If a company is procuring funds, then it can procure funds through issue of debentures, or it can ask for loans from banks, financial institutions, or it can do trade credit or public deposits in case of banks. Clear? Next, right to return. The owner's fund security holders have no right to get regular return. Have no right to get regular return. Okay? Now, what happens here is, suppose if you are investing your own money into your company, if you're investing your own money into your business, you don't ask interest for the money which you have invested. Is no. You don't ask for what? Any return, any interest. But in case of borrowed fund, you have taken a loan from a bank, you have to pay principal plus interest, and you have to pay it every regular intervals, let's say monthly, quarterly, yearly, depending upon the agreement between your business and the banks. Okay, but you have to pay principal plus interest on a regular basis. But in the case of owners funds, if you are investing your own money into your business, right, since you are the owner of the business, you don't have to pay interest yourself. Yes or no? Because you're not giving a loan. Next, risk bearer. Owners fund security holders are primary risk bearer of the company. If you're investing your own money into your business, then you are taking all the risk. Yes, no, you are undertaking all the risk of the business. If the business is doing well, you'll get profit, you'll get return. If the business is not doing well, then you will lose all the money loss. You will lose all your money. Right, so you are taking all the risks. But in case of borrowed funds, if you're taking a loan from the bank, even if the business doesn't do well, you have to repay back the loan, yes or no? Regardless whether the business is doing well or not, you have to repay back the loan to the bank plus interest. Yes or no? So the bank is not bearing any risk, right? The bank is not bearing any risk. Because why? Regardless whether the business is doing well or not, you have to pay the loan amount back to the bank plus interest. Okay. Next, on the basis of sources of generation. On the basis of sources of generation, sources of business finance has been classified under internal sources and external sources. When we talk about internal sources, these are funds that are generated internally from within the business organization. Any funds which have been generated internally from the organization itself, that is known as internal funds, internal sources of finance. Okay, typical examples of internal sources of finance includes funds generated from business operations like profit from sales, utilization of accumulated reserves, and funds raised from sale of business assets. Any funds which have been generated from within the organization itself, that is known as internal sources of funds. How do the organization generate funds from within the organization itself? Through what? Through profit. Okay, if the business is earning a profit, let's say 10 lakh, from this 10 lakh, 7 lakh, they will give it to the shareholder as dividend. All right, and 3 lakh, they will invest it into the business itself. From where else can the organization get the fund internally? From sales. If the organization is selling, all right, selling its goods, they'll get money. Yes or no? If the organization is selling its goods, they'll get money. So that in that way, it's internally generating the funds. Yes or no? Utilization of accumulated reserves from profit. 10 lakh, then 3 lakh is being put within the reserves, within the reserve of the company itself, so that in the future, if in case the organization needs funds, then they can utilize this reserve. Okay, and funds raised from sale of business asset. The organization can sell off any of its assets to generate funds within the organization. Okay, fine. Next, external sources of finance. These are funds that are raised through external means, that is from outside entities. Any funds which has been raised from entities which are outside the organization, okay, such as banks, any other financial institution. If you borrow funds from outside their organization, then such kind of funds are known as external funds or external sources of finance. Fine. Of external sources of funds can be raised through debt. What is debt? Debt essentially means any kind of loan or borrowing. If you're taking any kind of loan or borrowings, then that is known as debt. This include loans from banks, if you're taking loans from banks, or any other financial institution, public deposits, letter of credit, or for a company if they issue what? Issue debentures. Okay. A company can also procure funds from outside through issue of debentures. Such kind of funds which have been procured through borrowings from outside parties, right? Then such kind of funds are known as external sources of funds. Yeah. So we have come to the end of this lecture. I hope all of you like it. Okay, please like, share and subscribe my channel Commerce Cluster, and please do share it with your friends. Okay, thank you.